So I got a question for you. Have you ever started a project and then it didn't get finished and now you've got this half-baked project that's sitting around haunting you forever and it's bothering you and it's really getting to you? Well, let's talk about that and specifically look into, is that a bad thing or a good thing? I don't know. Let's find out. Welcome back to thoughtraid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon, and this is Tim, and today we are talking about, are you afraid to leave things unfinished? And that's a really important question to ask, because a lot of people start stuff and it may never really get finished. And I know people who really feel bad when they have unfinished projects around them. They feel like it's some kind of testament to their character or how good they are and things of that nature. And I really want to take some time to address it. But this week, this is Tim's week. So I want to kick this over to you because this is something that's also been on your heart as well. So what's God been showing you when it comes to unfinished projects or whatever it may be that's unfinished?
I don't know, but whenever it's great, Get Naked Monday version Tim, it's like, it's finally all about me. I love this. But guys, the idea of leaving things unfinished and I guess just having so much open-ended stuff going on, whether it's tasks, relationships, problems, whatever, it's always been really easy for me to feel overwhelmed in all that. In my old lifestyle, there were so many things that were on my plate that I wasn't taking responsibility for. And there were just tons of problems that I should have taken the time to fix, but because there were so many, it's kind of like going into a hoarder's house. You just look around and you just get exhausted and you start losing faith and you start feeling hopeless. Mm-hmm. So I guess today, I want to talk about leaving things unfinished, both the good sides and the bad sides, because there are good sides for that, or good reasons for that as well. But for me, I think one of the big one was, and it's something that I still struggle with to an extent, is perfectionism. Because I had a friend over yesterday, Kyle, if you're watching, thank you so much. There's this huge pile of dirt in my driveway that we got, I think, October of last year when we were building the retaining wall, and it was several tons of just red dirt clay, filler dirt, you know. And Ariane said that's going to be there for months, just kind of being realistic, because she's a realist and very pragmatic. And I was like, nah, I'll get this knocked out in a week or so. And so I got my little wheelbarrow, got my shovel, and I kept hauling back and forth. And I got to a point where I was satisfied with my project and it started getting really cold. And so I rationalized in my mind why I shouldn't finish. Plus, I didn't really know what to do with the next step. And so it's like, okay, it's getting cold. I'm not really too sure of what next step I need to take. I don't really have direction with this. There's other things I want to do. There's, bigger rocks that I want to focus on. I'll just save this for later. And then that was October. So you have November, December, January, February, March. 5 months, almost half a year goes by. And it has gone by. And yesterday it was pretty warm. I think it was like 70 degrees. It was really nice outside. My buddy Kyle came over and we did man stuff. So we got those big railroad ties. They're like 200-pound logs, essentially. We finished putting those into place. We had to dig a channel under my the porch foundation to squeeze one in, and we got that done. And it felt really good finally figuring that out, because last October or whatever, that was like one of the big issues. I didn't know how to fix that, because the foundation of my porch, there's these big concrete holes. Have you seen them do that, where they dig a hole for a post and pour concrete in?
Yes.
Yeah, so it was one of those, and I couldn't dig through it, and I'm like, all right, so I guess I have to stack them. It just wasn't lining up. The railroad ties were not lining up properly. And so we figured it out yesterday, which was cool. And then Kyle and I started moving dirt. So he would put it in the wheelbarrow, move it over, dump it and I would spread it with a rake. Pretty exhausting process, and I think we made a dent in maybe a fourth of what's left out there. But God was just starting to talk to me about leaving things unfinished. So a second ago, I talked about my early life, about how there were so many things left unfinished that were my responsibility, and how perfectionism came into play. I think we all have it in our hearts to do a good job with things, and we want to. And that term is different for everybody. A good job, like a good job for Brandon, is much different from a good job for Tim.
That's
and
true.
And what satisfies him and what satisfies you is different from what will satisfy me when it comes to doing something.
Yep.
For instance, we've, as you guys can tell, we've started a new format for ThoughtRaid, and Brandon has been spending 15 to 45 minutes on the thumbnails prior to the stream, and I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, just leave it alone, please. Can we just move on? Let's do something.
This is very important, okay?
Yeah, and my level of satisfaction with that was different. And I think I am that way now because perfectionism in my life to complete things, and not only complete them, but complete them well, has driven me to a place where I made majors out of every minor. And so now I'm more conscious about evaluating, is this actually worth it? And I don't get it right. I definitely don't get it right frequently, or as frequently as I feel like I could. But perfectionism is kind of thwarting, man. It'll keep you standing still.
It will.
But how do you feel about leaving stuff unfinished? What's that like for you?
Well, it's interesting. So a big example of something that I left unfinished was a book that I was writing in high school when I was bored. I would, during class, if the whatever it wasn't trying to make some kind of advertisement.
Thank you to our sponsor, Goya.
They're not our sponsor.
If you ever see this, Goya, I would love for you to be our sponsor. Fill my fridge with your delicious agua de coco con tricotos. Hydrante natural.
Hydrante natural.
Anyways.
Yes, our email is thoughtraid@gmail.com. But anyways, I wrote a book in high school during the times where I was kind of bored. And it was really good. Like I went into like at least 200 and maybe 50 pages worth of a book, just writing it handwritten. Hadn't gone through the editing process, but it was a beautiful stream of conscience. And I loved it. But then the book started to look very similar to a video game that I was playing, which was City of Heroes. And then I just stopped. And the book became unfinished. And it has not been finished since that point. And I have been out of high school for 11 years now. Wow. So, but the thing with it, though, is that this unfinished book turned into something that I brought with me everywhere I went. So I'd start a new video game and I would create things. The book was called Drymore Discovering Earth, because it was all about a planet named Drymore, and there was these humans that lived there, and it was like they're like 1,000 years ahead of Earth. And they had ridiculous technology, and their planet was like Coruscant in Star Wars, like an Eucanopolis. And they needed new land, and they discovered quantum portals, so they were able to like go anywhere they can essentially think or imagine. And they found Earth in the process. And so I kept that concept everywhere I went, and then 2017, that's what, 4 years ago? I ended up starting online roleplay, and kind of like a D&D type thing. And that...
What a nerd.
Wait.
Behold, nerd.
Nerd Brown.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I love D&D.
Exactly. It's so good. But it said we did a text-based thing, and we based it in the planet of Drymore, and this unfinished project turned into this beautiful 4-year-long role play that has challenged people to grow and to realize things about themselves, and brought people to new levels of creativity they didn't even know they had in them. And so, like, that's an interesting example, because am I sad that I have not completed the book? Sure, and I do intend to finish the book at some point, but this book started a whole, essentially kind of like a D&D ministry, in a sense, accidentally. And it wouldn't have existed if I had not had this unfinished book that I was interested in keeping in the back of my head.
Yeah. But stuff like that really gets to me. You know, just thinking about leaving, I put in chat, we sometimes feel like a clean slate will free us up to move forward. I've felt like that so many times in my life. I don't know if you guys have ever felt like that, but I have a tendency to assess what my life looks like, especially if I'm feeling depressed or hopeless or just feeling bad about my life or myself or relationships, or if I've just received some harsh criticism or people just being unkind. And I look at all the things that I feel like I need to finish, just be done with this so I can move on. And it's paralyzing, you know, because there's so much of that. Like at one point, I remember there's a passage in the Bible that says something about going to the altar of God and leaving your prayer or leaving your offering there. And it says, if you have a grievance with your brother, before you offer the prayer, set that down, go reconcile everything, then come back.
Right.
I'm like, great, let me go reconcile every single issue I have with everybody in my life before I can reach God. And that's one of those scriptures where it's like, I can't do this. You know, there's so many things like that where if you take it the wrong way, it feels like condemnation because you're never going to be able to muster up, you know.
But there was some other verbiage in that scripture verse, if I'm remembering correctly, that was like, if you think of somebody that you have a problem with, before you do your sacrifice, go and reconcile with them and then come back and do it. So that means that if you're not thinking about someone and that's not, you know, placating your mind, go forward with that sacrifice. And again, also, that was the Old Testament. But it was just interesting, like, we can sometimes miss those small little pieces. Because, like, you know, if you look at it of just simply, like, any person that you have a problem with, but if you're not specifically thinking about them, you know, you're never, like, if you try to think of every single person, you're never going to get to that altar to make that sacrifice because you'll keep thinking of more and more people. But it's specifically inviting those who recognize that there is one person that is on their mind that they have a problem with, they haven't done anything with. That's what is targeting you, to want you to go and reconcile with them. Because the main thing of it, I think the meat of what that was all about was that, again, God never wanted sacrifices. It wasn't something that he necessarily, like, enjoyed, that people had to keep killing lambs and rams and bulls and all kinds of things. Like, he wanted people to live righteously. So it was probably more important to God that you deal with the hardness you have in your heart towards your brother than making a sacrifice in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But just thinking about moving on, do you ever think to yourself, before I can move on, I must first blank? And that's what I'm talking about, because I remember before I moved out of my parents' house, I thought to myself, well, before I move out of my parents' house, I have to reconcile all my debts and fix them. I have to get out of debt. Before I move out of my parents' house, I have to make sure my brother is okay. Before I move out of my parents' house, I have to make sure my parents are okay. Because that's all unfinished business. If you have any relationship whatsoever, you're going to have unfinished business.
Unfinished relationships.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's stuff that includes other people, and there's stuff that just includes us. And I think I can have more grace for things that include other people because I can't control that. But when it comes to things for myself, I remember thinking before I got married, okay, before I can engage in a relationship, I have to be financially stable. Before I can love my wife properly, I have to fix my addiction to pornography. Before I can do that, before I can be kind to my wife or be a good leader, I have to be able to maintain my anger and control that. And I mean, there's just so many qualifiers. Before I can move on, I must. And so just thinking about that, it is overwhelming. You know, it almost left my life feeling chaotic. So if you're looking around in your life and you're looking at relationships and all the circumstances that you think are keeping you where you're at, it just seems like there's so much chaos being buried on top of you. Have you ever felt that way?
With having like all these things that I need to do, and it just gets worse and worse.
All these things that are in motion, thinking, man, all these circumstances are keeping me pushed down.
Yep.
It's like you're in a hole and somebody's continuously shoveling dirt on top of you while you're trying to shove the dirt to the sides, you know?
Yeah. Usually that happens when I keep overcomplicating things.
Yeah, but that feeling of the overwhelming chaos makes it really easy to want to give up sometimes.
Yeah.
Because it feels like you're never going to get out of it. Like, look at the life of Joseph. You know, he was anointed, and, well, not anointed. He was given a dream by God. He told his brothers. And what was it, like 30 or 40 years or something ridiculous, 20 years?
A long time. I don't know exactly how long, but a long time.
Yeah, God told him he was going to be king.
Yep. Well, specifically with Joseph, he told him that his brothers and family was going to bow down to him.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, cool. It's kind of like when we bought this house, I didn't truly understand all the responsibilities that came with it. I thought I knew, but then several $1,000s later, and a replaced roof, and killing all the creatures in the basement, and sealing things, and water heaters and leaky pipes, and all these things. It's like, oh my goodness. Looking at the life of Joseph, he knew that God said, your brother's going to bow to you. But from when he accepted that and was like, okay, I believe this, and I put that here, there were several years where things did not really go as planned.
Instead, he bowed to everyone else.
And that was unfinished business, so to speak. And King David was the same, too. He was actually anointed to be king. There was somebody else on his throne, but he still respected that person through the process. And that process is what I'm talking about, because at any given time, you probably have 20 to 40 processes active. I'm thinking, oh, we have a loan on this house, and that's an active process that I feel like I need to, that's unfinished business, and then just thinking about this house in general. I got to finish the retaining wall stuff out there. We got to paint our porch. What else is there? We need to seal the basement. We're going to redo the bathroom up here. We've been talking about that, putting a tub in. And there's just a myriad of things that are unfinished that I've started. Scraping our popcorn ceilings. We've started that too. Finishing this office. I don't even know what else I want to do in here, but there's so much stuff. And then I have all of our relationship things, like between me and Ariane. Like, I'm trying to figure out situations where I get defensive when I shouldn't, and working on myself with that. Our finances, like figuring that out more, because I'm not bad with our finances, but I could definitely be better. And it's like, Tim, at what point are you going to feel like that business is finished? And why do I chase after that? And when I'm so focused on my unfinished business, it's so easy to overlook opportunities that come my way because I feel like I can't accept anything else.
Yeah.
That's really big. And I think that's even harder for Christians, for people that are actually pursuing God. Because a lot of Christians pursue God from the perspective of, I have to be sin-free. A lot of non-Christians view Christianity as, oh, that's a religion where you have to be so focused on what you're doing wrong. And that's tough too, because that's unfinished business. It's basically a narrative where you're conveying the thought of, or the idea that, okay, well, before you can have a relationship with God, you have to get rid of your sin. Before you can talk to people about love, you have to be sin-free yourself. There's just so many qualifiers on that. I don't know.
But yet that's not exactly where you start. Once you have accepted Jesus as your Savior, you start from His finished work. He's already finished the work. The salvation part has been finished. The connection back to the Father has already been finished. The debt has been already paid. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to spend all that time getting up to Jesus. All of that has been finished on the cross with Jesus. That when we accept Jesus and the sacrifice of His life for us to have those things, that's where we start from. And I think a lot of people have a hard time is they feel like they have, like you're talking about, they have to get their life together before they interact with Jesus, and that is backwards. That's the problem. None of us were able to fulfill the law because we saw the requirements of it, and some of us rebelled against it, and some of us tried our darnest but couldn't achieve it because there's just so many laws.
Well, Jesus' final words when He was on the cross is, it is finished. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. It is finished. But at the same time, you look at your life, and if you just look around and it's finished, and you don't work on anything, your life starts to fall in on itself, and then all your circumstances start making your decisions for you. And so just looking at all the things that are unfinished in my life right now, like the house stuff, the relationship stuff, the financial stuff, the future stuff, like Thought Raid and Break the Meta are definitely not finished. We're always trying to figure new stuff out because we have a goal we're trying to get to.
Right.
I have a goal that I'm trying to get to in Break the Meta, and I think it's really difficult to process things and figure out what to finish first or what to begin working towards being finished first when everything looks like a major. Because I have a tendency to, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about... Okay, so this morning I took out the trash, and so I took the trash down the stairs, opened the garage, boop, saw that the trash can was at the base of our driveway. So I'm like, all right. So here I am trucking down my driveway with my thing of trash. I toss it in the trash and open up my mailbox and, let me look at the mail. Okay, going back upstairs. And I looked over at our retaining wall, saw the grass seed that we had planted. It's like, since I'm already down here, let me go ahead and spray this off and watering the seed for like 15 minutes. And then I'm like, oh no, I just left the trash can open without a bag. And I left my turkey and my mustard, my mayonnaise, and my sandwich bread on my counter from where I was going to make a sandwich. And before I knew it, an hour and a half had gone by and I hadn't even made my sandwich. And that was like one of my starter things today, It's like, okay, well, what if I do something of significance? It's the whole focus, not spray thing. And I think I have a tendency to spray, and that causes me to leave simplistic things unfinished.
I don't know what to say about that, Tim.
Hey,
hello there, Austin.
Yeah, but all that to say, I think just getting started with your day, or if you're at a place where everything feels chaotic and you feel overwhelmed, you just have to start your day and just reassess, what is my goal? What is my focus?
Definitely, you need to prioritize what is most important, honestly. That will help you determine what needs absolutely to get finished and what can take time to be finished. So like when it comes to salvation, you want to start with the finished work of Christ. Christ paid for your salvation. He paid for you to have communication back with the Father through the Holy Spirit. He paid for you to be made righteous. You can start from there and work from that finished work. That you don't have to earn your salvation, earn your righteousness or things of that nature. Not to say that you don't work to live righteously per se, but like being sin conscious is not necessary because Jesus already covered it with your blood. You want to be righteousness conscious because that, again, it comes down to where you're looking. If you're constantly looking in your rear view mirrors, you will drive to wherever your rear view mirrors are pointed eventually. Sooner or later, you're going to swerve off the road and not make it to your destination. And so looking at your sin nature and focusing so much on that is only going to cause you to produce more of your sin nature. But when you focus on the righteousness that you have been given because of Jesus and his finished work, then you begin to move in that direction specifically and manifest more and more righteousness because you are more convinced that you are the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus than a sinner who is at the end of his rope. So you want to start from there. When it comes to like other things in life, like priorities are very important. Like what is most important is making sure that your yard looks picture perfect more important, or is the relationship what you have with your wife more important, or like trying to like prioritize things from first to last. I feel like for me, the way that I typically end up prioritizing things is that people are the highest on my list of priorities besides God. So I've got my time with God, and then I have my time with people, because I recognize that at the end of my life, my yard is not coming with me, my furniture is not coming with me, my car is not coming with me, nothing physical is coming with me, but people can. And so for me, that is significantly more important, so I prioritize my time spent with people because I want to maximize how many people I can, have with me in heaven so I can join them for eternity, instead of be, apart from them for eternity. I don't want that. So, then anything beyond that, when it comes down to projects that I'm working on, or whatever, like, not as important. Not that it's not important. It's just not as important to me as the people themselves are.
Yeah. So I put in chat, do you think it's healthy to leave some things unfinished? And Austin said something.
He said, I think it's okay to leave things unfinished, but it depends on your goals. Sometimes it's best to leave things unfinished in order to let someone grow organically. A chore... let me see more. There's more to this. A chore, of course, should be finished, but what about a brand or a business or belief? Walls define, walls constraint, but some things should be left open.
Guys, I've been playing Final Fantasy XI since December again, and the interesting thing about that is my main character is a red mage. And a red mage is it has a lot of responsibility in the activity of taking out a monster. You debuff it, which, like, you slow it down, you addle it, you cast paralyze or whatever on it. You buff your party members, haste, regeneration, protect, whatever. Then you also deal damage, and then you're also focused on adds, all the extra stuff coming in that is secondary to the main tank.
Sounds like a controller class in City of Heroes.
Essentially, yeah. I play a controller class. Go figure.
I do too.
In real life.
Wait.
But wait. Here's the thing, it's interesting how throughout my young adulthood I played that game, and that's what I just naturally inclined towards. And the thing about being a healthy, good, established, effective red mage is you have to learn how to prioritize what when. For instance, if one of my allies is really hurt and they're going to die if I don't cast Cure on them, what am I doing over here trying to attack this monster when my priority is keeping my team alive?
Yeah. Or defender role. That's actually kind of defense. Sounds like... Sorry, I'm categorizing everything into City of Heroes, one of my favorite MMORPGs. That's
okay. Well, the cool thing about God is he always talks to me, and he'll talk to you the same way, too. This is how he communicates. He talks to me the way that makes sense to me, and the way that's relevant to what I'm doing, right? And so... he's like, well, think about it this way. In this game, you've determined that your priority is keeping your team alive. Your second priority is taking down the monster. And it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, then casting Cure on my team takes precedence over casting Fire on the bad guy. Much like with my financial life, my first priority should be making sure our mortgage is taken care of before I buy a pack of Doritos. Or leaving things unfinished. If I'm having, I don't know, if it's date night for me and Ariane, or we're doing something, or if we're engaging in an argument, or it's something relationship related, that should take precedence over taking out the trash or something else. There's no reason why I should put something secondary or tertiary over something primary.
The interesting thing about that is most people don't like playing supporter roles. Everyone wants to be the DPS. They want to be the one who does the most damage, because getting all these things done is fun.
Yeah, well, like for me, I don't know how many of you know this, but God gave me this image of a spider web, and I was at the center, and you know how spider webs are anchored in different places,
right?
God was telling me, well, you're in the center holding all these different pillars together. That's going to be your role. And I love that idea where it's almost like subliminally one of the more effective roles. Yeah. You don't realize it because it's just like with my house. I don't, I look at the paint color on the walls and I think about the plumbing and stuff, but none of that would be here if I didn't have a concrete foundation. Yeah. I think about the air conditioning and everything, but I wouldn't have my air conditioning if I didn't have electricity. All the things that lead back to ground zero. And I like that. I like the idea of having that role because when other people fail, or whenever other things fall apart, even though it's fundamental, that's still there, But Austin had a good point when he was talking about a business or a belief and all that stuff. And the crazy thing about Christianity is a lot of people think that the goal of Christianity is to get other people who don't believe to believe, and that's not the case. No. Much like in a business, my job as the boss was not to do everybody's job and make sure, I do A, B, C, D. My job was to delegate and teach so that the business could continue on. Like any healthy leader, any effective leader, any good leader gets his team or his business established where it can run on without him being there. That's the sign of a true effective leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
one of the most important things with that are learning how to navigate boundaries and learning how to empower people to rise to the occasion to be responsible for what they need to be responsible.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you leave things unfinished in a healthy way. Two things. Learn your list of priorities and never let a B priority take precedence over an A priority. And then learn boundaries. Put boundaries around those things and figure out what you're responsible for and what you're not responsible for. I honestly think that's the key, because not only was my life chaotic back in the day because I was making B priorities A priorities or making everything into an A priority, I felt like I had to do everything, for everybody.
Well, that's not. There are many things you can do alone, but survival is not one of them.
Yeah.
Thank you, Impact University, for drilling that into my head. Yeah. Teams are the fundamental building unit of any organization. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Growth without change is impossible, and there are many things you can do alone, but survival is not one of them. That's three or four main things that are just drilled into my head pretty much every week at least. Maybe not every day, but every week it was in my head. Which they're all really good, but especially as you're talking about things like a business, it's some things take more priority over others. Like we're never done when it comes to evolving and changing ThoughtRaid, because who we're trying to reach, where they're at and all that kind of stuff changes depending on the times. And so if I were to try to do things a specific way all the time, well, that would only help certain people, but then we would cap out at that. And we would not be able to reach other people who don't necessarily think or like that. But when it comes to, though, doing these broadcasts 3 times a week, that's something that needs to be finished 3 times a week. So, that takes more priority, is making sure that we have the consistency that's there, so it's not like where's ThoughtRaid? I don't know. Which, speaking of which, one quick announcement. When it comes to next week, I will be in Florida, so we will be not having any kind of broadcasts for next week, as I will be visiting family and friends down there. But this week is still business as usual, though. Just want to let you know that I had a schedule, so it's not a surprise. Where's ThoughtRaid? Well, that's where it is. As we begin to develop a bigger staff, we can mitigate that, but we're still in the process of building ourselves up. So I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Well, Brandon, I guess I'm kind of getting towards the end of my thoughts on these, but how do you learn to let go of things that are unfinished?
Well, unfinished things are not necessarily the end of the world, and they have the opportunity to be picked up back up again once you know what you're doing. And so, if you don't know what you're doing, you don't have to immediately finish it right then and there. You can take some time to learn what it takes to properly finish it, and then come back to it. Especially depending on what it is. If it's a life or death thing, maybe that's a little bit different. But if it's, something like, for instance, your yard, trying to get those railroad ties up where they need to be and filling in all the dirt, not as critical to your survival. It's more of a, nice thing to have. So I feel like in that area, it's like, this we need to work on this. We can figure out how to get it done properly, but I'm not going to stress over it and So, in something like that, or when it comes to, reading a book, it's not the end of the world if you don't read it from cover to cover immediately. You can put it down, read another book, and come back to that book when the time is right. When it comes to, a trip or something, I don't know, if the things are not literally life and death, these are things that you don't need to stress over. It's okay to take some time, because when you come back to it, then you'll be much more equipped emotionally and educationally to deal with it and make sure that it's finished properly. Or again, bring on other people to help you finish it. Sometimes, the problem with us finishing something is because we're trying to put it all on our shoulders, and it's not meant for it to be all on our shoulders. So you're moving heavy objects. It's nice to have someone there to help you lift it with you, so that way you're not, because here's the thing. This is
I wish we had a ding every time you said, here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Here's the thing.
Here's the thing.
Here is the
Guys,
thing.
here's the thing.
The thing. What the reason why I'm kind of personally slow when it comes to doing all these different things with workouts is because I'm making sure that I'm not hating the process. Yes, I can throw myself into 500 push-ups and do all these things with enough time, but I also would hate the process, and then I wouldn't get around to doing it because I'm putting all this weight on my shoulders all at once, and I don't want that. I want to continue to slowly build my body up so that it's where it needs to be as I get older. In the same way, if you got certain projects that are very daunting, instead of trying to accomplish it all by yourself, bring other people there with you to make it a lot easier on yourself so you're not hating the moment. It's like when you're trying to, let's say you want to have your car worked on because it's having an engine issue and that's going to take time and money. You can, of course, if you have the money, go and have them take care of the engine and then sit and wait for them to work on it, which can be a very boring process. Or you can bring a friend with you who can help you and give you something to do, and they can drive you around, and it's suddenly not so much of a grueling process to have that done. So I feel like some things, if they've been unfinished for a long time, perhaps it's one of those things you should bring other people into the process to make it more palpable and make you want to do it rather than trying to do it all on your own. It's okay to reward yourself to do things you don't want to do. For the small things, like I don't like cleaning my house, but I love music. So as part of cleaning my house, I get to listen to music, and then that helps me get through every little task, and then sometimes I do extra because I'm so wrapped up in the music.
Yeah. So I guess in closing, guys, I want to talk about pacing. If you're like me and you've in the past dealt with condemnation for your lifestyle and where you're currently at, and you just feel overwhelmed, it's really easy to think I have to do everything now. And not just everything, I have to do everything now, and I also have to do it well. And then on the other side of things, it's like, I can do everything now, and I can do everything well, and then things end up costing more money, more time, more emotional energy, and then you feel like a failure because you didn't achieve it on your timeline. That's why SMART goals are so effective. And when I say SMART, that's an acronym. Look it up. It'll change your life if you actually apply it and learn how to use that on a daily basis. But I want to talk about pacing because you have finite amounts of resources to use every day. Emotional energy, physical energy, time, relational energy, finances. You do have limitations. Rome wasn't built in a day, even though we wanted it to be. You can't pay. Anyways.
The statement, I really want Rome to be built in a day. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for Rome to resurrect itself.
Well, how about something that hits closer to home? I was going to say something about marriage, but I don't know. We all want to be married. Most of us want to be married. I don't want to say we all. Most of us want to be married, and we want to be married yesterday.
Now. Or yesterday, yeah.
If you are single and you're just desperately thinking, man, I just wish I had somebody, man. You got to pace yourself and just enjoy the process. God's been talking to me a lot this year about serendipity. And honestly, Arian and I were talking about this last night about how it seems like a lot of people are bound up about finding a mate, finding a boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, whatever. And we just feel like we were super lucky, like I don't think at all in my life I ever had a feeling of desperation, like, man, I just wish I had a wife. I mean, the idea, man, I wish I could have sex was definitely there, but, the idea, man, I just desperately want a wife. Oh, I desperately want a girlfriend. Like, the seeking part was just as fun as the having it part, and for me, it was just more serendipity where I found it along the way to a greater cause. And whatever that was, whether it was building a business, because I used to be in Amway, and that was my focus, then I discovered who Jesus was and the fact that he wants a relationship with me and that he loves me. It's like, okay, well, let me pursue that, and then, now that I feel full of love, let me pursue giving that away. And over the course of figuring all that out, I met my wife, I didn't try to do it all at once because you can't do it all at once. I think it's really important to set small, reasonable, consistent goals you can do daily with things that are unfinished. Focus on the things that need to get done, like Austin was saying and like Brandon's been saying. And then whatever you have left over, be okay with just enjoying that process, because there's going to be stuff that comes up in the future that's going to have more quality, more enthusiasm, more excitement over the stuff that you had previously. For instance, in Final Fantasy, my game, whenever I leveled up to a higher level, that sword that I was questing after previously at a lower level, which was awesome, is now dwarfed by this new item that's now available to me, and it executes the same purpose, and that happens frequently in our lives. And I put in chat, how do you learn to let go of things that are unfinished? Well, as you grow and as you pursue and as your life gets larger and larger and larger, and your perspective specifically gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you start to realize that the things you were so hyper-focused on before that were small rocks made into big rocks are actually inconsequential. And then you'll find out that focusing on a big priority later in life actually includes in part that smaller priority that you were previously focused on, and just by circumstance and just by focusing on what you needed to get done, that gets done as well.
Yep. And if you need help along the way trying to figure out what should and should not be a priority to you, especially as you've been spending time to get to know Jesus, I'd suggest asking him, what should or should not be a priority in my life right now? Because once he sets that, his burden is light, his yoke is easy. So he knows exactly what you do need to be working on, and he can help you get there. And you can know that if he's called you to it and you're doing it, and this is what he's showing you to do, everything else then can take different levels of a back seat depending on what it needs to be. There's obviously responsibilities that we have, like paying bills, that's important to part of being on our own or surviving. But beyond that, though, having God there to help you kind of actualize what is it that I'm specifically needing to focus on, that makes it a lot easier in the process of figuring out that hierarchy of what needs to be finished and what could be left unfinished.
Yeah. And also, guys, having something that's drawing you forward. With Break the Meta and all the life coaching and consulting stuff I do, one of my main focuses is helping people discern what the purpose for their life is, because you do have a purpose. And one would argue that purpose is irrelevant because we're all just created to love, but we're created to love in different ways.
Right.
And I'm not saying that that's not a universalistic mindset. There are different things that God equips you to do, and a reason he puts you in this. You are in your circumstances in ways that God uses all the crap that you go through to help you love people. That's what I'm saying. But when you're focused on that, when you're focused on your overall destination, for instance, when you're going to the beach, we live in North Carolina. One of the big attractions here is Myrtle Beach. I think it's trashy. A lot of people love it, whatever. But if you're going to the beach, you think to yourself, okay, put this in my GPS. All right, Myrtle Beach, 3.5 hours away. Great. You might have some car trouble on the way. You might get hungry. You might get halfway and remember, oh, crap, I left my pillow at home. I don't have my deodorant, whatever. All these little things that are unfinished, like, man, I didn't pack well enough. I need to turn back and finish that before I can go. You get 2.5 hours down the road, you don't think about that. You just think about your overall destination. And when you're there, you're thinking about enjoying that destination. you know. And you have to look at life that same way. When you have a destination and a place that you're going, all these things that are not, I'm going to this place, don't matter as much. And there have been so many times where we've been going somewhere, or we've discovered crazy awesome restaurants, or we've discovered a better destination than where we were heading in the first place. And that's because we got lost. You know, serendipity just has a way of finding its way in your life and showing you, wow, you didn't even know that you needed this, you know? And so that's why it's so difficult to reconcile the thought of, I need to figure everything out perfectly before I take action. A lot of times you just need to take action, and everything you thought that you need to figure out will figure out itself. So make a plan, figure out where you're trying to go, and just focus solely on that, and everything else, honestly, will sort itself out. Guys, one of the big things for me, talking about the hoarding thing earlier, I alluded to that. I was kind of a hoarder in my previous life, you know, my old lifestyle. And when I left my parents' house to live at we called it the friendship house, there was a lot of stuff that I brought with me, stuff that just I clung to because I felt like it gave me validation, and I felt like it made me feel better about the chaos in my life because I can control the things that were in my living space. And that was a sense of comfort for myself. But it wasn't healthy because anytime part of that comfort and security would be threatened, I would cling to it and say, you know, and that prevented me from moving forward. And then when Ariane and I got married, I had to think to myself, okay, well, I'm getting married. I'm moving into the space with this woman. And I know that some of this stuff stresses her out. You know, like just the clutter stresses her out for good reason. It stressed me out. When in actuality, I thought it gave me comfort, when in actuality it just stressed me out at the idea of having to maintain it. And so
it's amazing how that works.
Yeah, it was very deceptive. And so we moved into the apartment, and for the longest time, we had this little sunroom alcove in our apartment that was just covered with boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff that I still had not gotten rid of. And it got to the point where we just threw a blanket over it. And from our living room, you could see this really gross-looking brown blanket covering all this stuff. Some of it smelled like rat pee because it was in storage trailers and whatnot. Yeah. And I just couldn't bear to let go of it. We had a lot of arguments about that. And they were selfish arguments that I caused. And then we moved into this house. And at one point, God was like, start getting rid of stuff. And I was like, okay, because I had a bigger focus. And then I still have some things in my closet. But the point is, I don't think about it and I'm not attached to it. If somebody said, hey, you should give this stuff up, I don't have that. Because I know that where I'm going has fruit that's a lot better than what I think matters a lot to me right now. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's not, I'm not saying that with absolute confidence and, you know, I'm going to follow God obediently 100% because where God has me in those scary places, I'm just going to, no, there's definitely places where God says, I want you to go and I want you to do it. I'm like, chill. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that yet. But the point of all this is that, there are some things you think that you need to cling to because they're not finished, that are actually keeping you in bondage from moving on. And the only way that you can move on and the only way that you can get beyond that is by taking a step towards something that's greater. And it's kind of like having a pitcher full of a cup of Coke. It's, you know, that cup of Coke is dark brown, but as you pour water in, it dilutes until you can barely tell that it's there. It's always going to be there to a small degree, but by dilution, is that a word?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, by focusing on something bigger and adding more and more positive stuff, adding more and more Jesus, adding more and more of a bigger focus, all those little things become much smaller in comparison. Yeah. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like your life is chaotic, you know, sometimes you just have to leave some things unfinished and just pursue the couple things that are within your ability and your resources that actually matter.
You know, that's very interesting, though, that concept of the dilution and stuff, and the fact that the amount of space it would take for you to properly dilute, let's say, a cup of Pepsi, would be, you would probably need to double it in size in order to pour enough water to get it diluted that you can't even see the Pepsi anymore. Mm-hmm. But that's an interesting analogy because it shows you how small your life is apart from Christ. for you to be able to see this, because let's look at the Pepsi as the sin in our lives, the stagnation, the whatever you want to call it, the just the place where we decided, okay, I've reached max, I can't go any farther than this. It's so small, and God wants us to expand, which so He can continue to pour into us, to eventually you can't even see what used to be there. All you see is the water that He's pouring in there. And that's just an interesting representation. If you can still see it, you're too small. And
that's the thing, guys. Whenever I'm talking to somebody, and I say this from a professional point of view, when I'm talking to somebody and they have an issue, and a lot of times it's a relational issue, whether it's relational with themselves or relational towards people within their professional sphere or their familial sphere, whenever they have a position of thinking about themselves first, foremost, and only, it's because their perspective is so narrow. And I've, over the course of however many years I've been doing this legitimately, not just paid, but doing it legitimately, it just seems like part of the process of helping people move forward in life is drawing their perspective outward to see the bigger picture. So if this is your perspective, the can of Coke that we were talking about, and you're thinking, man, this what that person said to me hurts. How my childhood was sucks. The way this person is treating me it's not good. I don't appreciate that. I'm getting looked over at work. My health is this way. Whatever. That person cut me off. Man, F you. Just whatever. But then you zoom out. And you double your perspective, and there's all this space for stuff that you didn't consider before. Well, maybe that person that cut me off in traffic was in a hurry because their wife just got in a car wreck and they're trying to go to the hospital. Maybe the person that's angry with me at work is angry at me because they're not feeling loved at home. There's a song out there called "Boy in the Bubble." I forget what the artist's name is, but he's a relatively new artist. But he talks about he's walking home. He comes home and he's got a broken nose, and his mom what happened? And he said that through the chorus of the song, he talks about how he met this bully, and the boy was like square up, and the bully broke his nose and all this stuff. And he said one line, he said, "There's no excuse for the things he did, but there's things at home that he's working through," or something to that effect. And he said that his dad was a drunk since he was a kid. And so basically he's saying that when the bully goes home, his dad's always drunk, always beating him, and this is his, catharsis or whatever. And so if the kid getting beat up was just focused on, I hate this bully, he's so mean, whatever, it's all about me, that's all you're going to see. But when you zoom out, you're going to realize that that person's hurting too. There's something that's causing them for that. Yeah. And beyond that, if his dad is the aggressor there, what happened to his dad? What culture are they a part of that, I guess furthered that dynamic, that narrative? What caused that? And the more you zoom out, the smaller this perspective gets. And it gets really difficult to be upset about the small things when you're focused on the big things, because you see it's just a circle of hurt.
Yeah, that's it can quickly explain why God hates sin. Not because He hates you. It's because He sees the things that we do out of selfishness and out of fear and pride, and He can see the ripple effects that causes, not just for the person that you're being selfish towards, but to their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren, to the fourth generation. It can be just one little thing can do those things. That's why God is so intense when it comes about those things. It's not because He just wants to burden you down, and He definitely gives you grace in order to live up to that, but it brings into perspective how we should be living each day intentionally. Even though I know today we're talking about, finished and unfinished things, it's just what you just talked about. Maybe just go back to my global-minded mindset of just seeing how this is an interwoven weave.
Well, I think that's a good closing point, because as humans, we think that if we finish things, we no longer have to deal with them. Think about the things that you feel like are unfinished in your life, whether it's a mortgage, car payment, hurt relationships. If you thought to yourself, okay, well, let me just patch up this hurt relationship. Let me just make it so I don't owe any money. Make it so I don't have to work. If everything in your life was finished, you would be dead. You would not be doing anything. And that's the thing. We're lazy creatures by default. We don't want to have to deal with those things. That's why we want everything to be finished. And that's why we need to learn to be okay with things not being finished, always being in process. If you guys have never read the book, I don't know if it's right here. You need to pick this book up. I think you guys can see it. It's called Present Perfect by Greg Boyd. And it talks about how we're not saved through Christ and all that stuff yesterday. We can't be saved through Christ for tomorrow. It's a right now decision. And there's so many things that are a right now decision when we live in the past and present thinking that that's going to fix whatever. But you can't control yesterday, and you honestly can't control tomorrow because you don't even know if you're going to be awake tomorrow. You don't know if you're going to be alive tomorrow. You don't know if that person that you have a grievance with is going to be within your life or alive tomorrow. You don't know that for sure. So right now is the only time to take action and to finish something if you really want to. And there's only so many things you can do. You can't do 20 things at one time.
Yeah.
And if you say that you are, you might be right, but you're also kind of prideful because get over yourself. But the thing about being present is just realizing, okay, well, there are things that I'm tasked to do, and my life is going to be in ever flux. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's a word. Your life is always going to be in flux of you entering into new spaces with new things that are beginning, and those things are going to maintain being unfinished until you either finish them or outgrow them, or you realize that you don't need to focus on them in general. But living life from a heart position of, okay, there are things that are going to be unfinished, but I have the ability right now, like I have a thing every morning that I do where I read and I'm like, okay, this is what I want to focus on. One of them is right now is the best time to follow God. Right now, not tomorrow, not 5 minutes from now, right now.
This is the day the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it.
And one of my favorite verses in the Bible is very simple, and it says, "Be still and know that I am God." And there's so much, it's so crazy how big that statement is, because the Bible also says, "My sheep hear my voice, the voice of another they shall not follow." So if you just be still, realize that He's God. He's focused as much on Brandon's life as He is on my life, as He is on your life.
Yes.
And I have to be still and say, okay, well, God, what do you want me to focus on right now? And that's the key. God, what do you want me to focus on? Because God is much better at leading you than you are at following Him. God is so much better at prioritizing things in your life than you are, because your humanness gets in the way of that. And then you just have to ask yourself, all right, God, I'm going to be still. I'm going to acknowledge who you are. And that, guys, that alone is worship. It's not, thank you, Jesus. It's, God, I acknowledge who you are. Thank you. Please show me that I'm loved. Show me how I can love you, and show me how I can love others, because that's what we're called to do. Love God with all of our heart, mind, body, and soul. Love others as we love ourselves. So be still and know that I'm God. Acknowledge who He is. Understand that you hear His voice, and if He really has good... the Word also says that I have plans to prosper you and establish you, not to harm you. That's what He says. I mean, that's God speaking to man. If that is all true, and another voice we shall not follow, okay, well, that means that God is going to direct me when I'm listening and in a relationship with Him. All I have to do, it also says, knock and the door shall be open, seek and you shall find. And if that's the case, okay, well, God, show me what to prioritize right now. And sometimes it doesn't make sense, because God is really good at showing us all the cool pit stops along the way. And God is very serendipitous, because He'll take us down a side road that we think is illogical, but that side road actually gets us to where we're going a lot faster, and it's a lot more enjoyable, scenic, and fulfilling and satisfying. But yeah, just, God, what do you want? And that's why it's so simple. Be still and know that I am God. That is the answer to it.
Just be.
Yeah, chillax.
That's a very confusing statement. Confused screaming. Just be. Just be. What does that mean? Just be.
Well, we're called human beings, not human doings, Brandon.
Yes.
That's Beth Johnson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you,
We're
Beth
human
Johnson.
Beings.
Beth Johnson, we probably need to have you here on Thought Raid at some point in the future. That'll be great.
Brandon, I feel like this is finished.
It is finished.
It is finished.
Well, sweet. Well, I want to thank you guys for watching. We broadcast every week, 3 times, Monday, Friday, and Saturday at 4 p.m. And we'd love to see you again soon. And if you like this stream, make sure to like it and share it with your friends so we can get the message out there.
I can see far away from where I've been. He says I see a potential. I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why you're alive. You're alive. You're alive. We sing Jesus, you're alive.